queen is lost. Your people are starving.
This is such a weird exchange. Newt Gunray is like, you will die soon and so will your people. And Sio Bibble is like, you will gain nothing. And then Newt Gunray sends him away. In a second, I'm going to explain why I don't like the inclusion of this 20-second scene.
The death toll is catastrophic. We must bow to their wishes.
Okay, so here's what's going on. Sio Bibble is claiming that what's going on Naboo is absolutely devastating and that he needs an update from the Queen or things will only get worse. Since Padme is a caring woman who wants to help people, she obviously wants to respond. But Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are insistent that this is just a trick so the Trade Federation can get the location of Padme and track her down. So Padme is in this moral dilemma about if she should respond or not. It's a pretty smart plot point to add to the story. It gives Padme character and adds tension to the plot. Is the death toll really catastrophic or is this all a trap? I really like this. Now, the issue I had with the previous scene is that it kinda answers the question for us. There is no catastrophic death toll because we see that everything seems okay. You'd think that if things were bad, Lucas would actually show us instead of showing us Newt Gunray and Sio Bibble. I don't like this because it removes the tension from the audience's perspective. Not always, but usually it's best that you want the audience to share the same perspective as the main characters. If Padme is pondering this decision to make contact with Sio Bibble or not, then we the audience should have the same knowledge as her so we can put ourselves in her shoes. But since we know that there is no catastrophic death toll, the scene here doesn't play out the same way. So there are one of two ways you can approach this. You either somehow have Sio Bibble give evidence that things are really bad on Naboo, so there is no mystery, but there's still a trap where the Trade Federation can find her, so Padme is forced to sit back and not respond as people are getting hurt. This would work. Or, if you want to maintain the mystery of it, then for this whole portion of the movie, do not show any scenes of people on Naboo. Only show Naboo scenes when Padme is on Naboo. One of these two storylines is the best way to approach this movie.
You alright? It's very cold.
This is a good example of Lucas paying attention to the characters' backstories and applying them to these scenes. Anakin grew up on Tatooine, a desert planet where it is presumably very hot. Even being on a nice air-conditioned ship is probably freezing for Anakin. It would make sense that he's freezing here.
I made this for you. So you'd remember me.
The Anakin and Padme scenes in this movie are really sweet and I love them. Going to a little boy and making sure he's okay is just a simple, kind thing to do, and it makes me appreciate Padme more. I still can't get out of my head that these two are going to get married someday. Padme here is acting more like a mother figure than a potential love interest for Anakin. She tells Anakin she cares for him, and she totally does, but not in a I don't like sand kind of way. I'm not going to repeat what I said in part 2 about why Anakin should have been older, but the scene here further supports my argument, even if I do like this scene. Coruscant is awesome. A city planet just seems like something made for Star Wars. I'll always be harsh on the prequels in some respects, but when it comes to most of the locations, I will always stand by them. Also, Coruscant just looks so much better here than it did earlier in the movie when it was nighttime. If you notice a few seconds later when the Naboo ship lands, there is no reflection of any of the flying ships on it. Maybe it's just the angle, but if the ship was truly reflective, you would probably see some of the flying ships through it.
With the communications breakdown, we've been very concerned.
You know what's a small detail this movie could have added that I would have really liked? If Anakin was just in complete awe of this planet. He grew up on Tatooine where he saw nothing but sand. He's not only seeing a new planet, but a city planet. I would be shitting my pants in awe if I ever got to see Coruscant. I think The Force Awakens had a scene similar to what I wanted to happen here. When Rey lands on Takodana, she's like, I've never seen this much green in the whole galaxy. And then she runs out of the Falcon to appreciate the scenery. It's a small detail, but one that goes a long way to building character. A moment like this for Anakin would have been nice. I do find it a bit peculiar that Qui-Gon is not taking Anakin to the Jedi Temple right now. Sure, Qui-Gon trusts Padme and the Naboo people, so it's not like Anakin is in any active danger, but the last time they were together on Tatooine, a Sith assassin showed up out of nowhere and tried to run over Anakin. And if Anakin is really the chosen one, as Qui-Gon suspects, then you'd think he'd be a bit more protective of him.
The queens are being grossly nice, Mr. Tinks. Pretty hot.
Did Jar Jar just call Padme hot? I don't know how to feel about this. For one, Jar Jar is a Gungan. Is he physically attracted to humans? I'm not sure Padme would go for him. Also, Padme is 14 in this movie. Isn't Jar Jar an adult? I actually have no clue how old Jar Jar is now that I think about it. According to Google, he is 20 years old. If we apply the same human moral standards to Jar Jar, then Jar Jar is even more of a creep than we previously thought. This sliding door on the left here is hilarious. It's not even a door, it's just a little barrier. It does look pretty cool, but it's completely impractical.
If I may say so, Your Majesty, the Chancellor has little real power.
I have such mixed feelings here. As someone who loves the Star Wars universe and the complexities behind it, these political discussions are awesome, but I have to analyze this movie in a trilogy, not as a fan of the lore. And from a movie perspective, the political stuff in this movie is just awful. It drags the pacing of this movie to a dead stop, kind of like that Canto Bight stuff in The Last Jedi. Is learning about corrupt politicians cool from a lore perspective? Yeah, but in this movie, it's not. I said this before, but this movie goes from making poop jokes one minute to talking about politics in another. The Phantom Menace doesn't have a consistent tone to it, and that's a big problem. Now, I know some of you will argue that showing the fall of democracy is important to this trilogy, and little scenes here plant the seeds of that. You aren't wrong, but I think Revenge of the Sith alone does a pretty solid job showing the fall of democracy. So having it here and having it be really boring doesn't work for me.
You could call for a vote of no confidence in Chancellor Valorum.
Why didn't the Jedi or anyone else call for a vote of no confidence in Palpatine during Revenge of the Sith? Couldn't that have stopped the rise of the Empire?
A Sith Lord.
Impossible. The Sith have been extinct for a millennium.
I don't know about that, Keonde Moody. Do you remember roughly 100 years ago, when you were much younger, you were involved in that one incident where Jedi Masters were getting murdered? Then you sent Jedi Master Soul to investigate and he ended up dying as well? It turns out that situation involved the Sith Lord. You should have done more digging back then.
We will use all our resources to unravel this mystery.
Bullshit, you will. Besides Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, all the Jedi do in this movie is sit on their asses. I hate to bring up the Acolyte in any positive light, but at least in that show, when there was a situation at hand, they sent like 10 Jedis to investigate. If the Jedi's arch enemy had returned for the first time in 1,000 years and I was the Grand Master, you bet your ass I would have sent the whole damn temple to investigate. I cannot emphasize enough in all the prequel movies how much I loathe the Jedi Council. I hate almost every one of these characters. I get that this was the point Lucas was going for, that the Jedi lost their way and that they were too involved in politics and the council had too much power. But this always kind of seemed to be a bit of an unnecessary story point for the prequels to explore. I think Revenge of the Sith would have been much more powerful if the Jedi were actually likable and good people. But part of me watching Order 66 now is like, good, I hate all these characters. They deserve to die for how corrupt and dumb they were. I respect Lucas for adding layers to the Jedi and the overall story of the prequels. I really do, but it just doesn't work all that well for me. Now, this will probably be a point I emphasize a lot more when talking about Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, but Yoda in the prequels is easily the dumbest character in the franchise. People say characters in the sequels suffered from character assassinations, but I will always argue that Yoda had it just as bad as anyone else. In the originals, he was so wise and even a bit funny. Here he's dumb as a rock. Every decision he makes in the prequels and even the Clone Wars is beyond idiotic. At least in the Clone Wars, he's sometimes wise and he has good things to say, but in the prequels, man, I hate everything about him. I will say this though about the Jedi Council, I think the room is gorgeous.
I've encountered divergence in the Force.
I wonder if Keonde Moody just got a PTSD flashback of Master Soul saying he found a virgins in the Force.
Bring him before us then.
God, even before Mace Windu met Anakin, he seemed to be so fed up with him.
I may never see her again, so I came to say goodbye.
The stuff with Anakin is so cute. These are the scenes I like in a movie. Small moments that show us about the characters. Anakin is a sweet kid who just wants to say goodbye. And it's also a good reflection on Shmi. She raised Anakin well. Now, to kind of ruin the wholesomeness of this comment, I love how to the right of Anakin, there's this statue of a borderline naked woman. I wonder if when making this film, Lucas specifically sought out a statue of a naked woman, or he asked that this be custom made. Excuse me, can you make a statue of a metallic naked woman? I'd really appreciate it. What scene will it be in? It'll be in a scene where a 9-year-old boy says goodbye to a 14-year-old girl.
object to the Senator's statements.
The chair does not recognize the senator from the Trade Federation at this time.
So Valorum here says that the chair does not recognize the senator from the Trade Federation at this time. Why does the Trade Federation have a senator? I was always under the impression that senators of the Senate were from systems of planets, like how Palpatine was a senator from Naboo. The Trade Federation is a corporation. Why do they get a representative? Is this subtle commentary about how corrupt this republic is, considering corporations have senators and representatives? How is a senator from a corporation even elected? It's usually the people who vote for senators. Do people on the board of the Trade Federation vote for their senators? That sucks. Imagine if Amazon had senators in the US Senate. That'd be so weird.
I come to you under the gravest of circumstances.
This stuff is so boring. I'm actually dreading watching these next 2 minutes finding things to overanalyze. This entire sequence on Coruscant absolutely kills the momentum of the movie. This is one of the reasons I believe Attack of the Clones is the superior movie over the Phantom Menace. Both have their faults, no doubt, but at least the Senate scenes in that movie have some urgency to them. Like Palpatine getting voted to emergency powers is a pretty cool moment. Nothing in this sequence is cool.
If this body is not capable of action, I suggest new leadership is needed.
There's something so jarring about this piece in this movie that no one seems to ever bring up. Like, not even staunched prequel haters ever bring this up, but it's so bizarre. Why does the political system of Naboo elect teenage girls as their queen? There is no universe out there where this is a good idea. It would be one thing if Padme was a queen from a royal family and she was the heir, so based on circumstances she had to become queen at a young age, but Padme is not from a royal family. She was elected as queen at this young age. If I was another senator and I saw a 14-year-old girl as the ruling queen of a nation, I would laugh my ass off. I feel like if a Star Wars project did this today, people would criticize Disney to high hell for such a dumb decision. In this one shot, you can see people of the same species as E.T. Pretty cool connection.
Anakin will become a Jedi, I promise you.
Do not defy the Council, Master, not again.
I like this scene. It gives us a deeper look into Qui-Gon and what he's like, and I appreciate that. The fact that Qui-Gon often disobeys the Council is a pretty cool character trait. Maybe Qui-Gon is growing on me because I loathe every other Jedi in this movie, but Qui-Gon's personality is building, and that's important for the story. I still wish it was Obi-Wan who was more interesting and was the one who often defied the Council, but what can I do?
I miss her.
Afraid to lose her, I think.
I hate the Jedi so much. Anakin is a 10-year-old boy. What do you expect? Also, long-term, what was the point of telling the audience that there was a lot of fear in Anakin? Is this supposed to be foreshadowing his turn to the dark side? It's just the whole movie every Jedi complains about Anakin and says he shouldn't be trained, but once Qui-Gon dies, they decide to train him for no good reason other than the promise Obi-Wan made to Qui-Gon. This storytelling is just messy. If all the Jedi say he shouldn't be trained, then who cares what Qui-Gon's dying wish was? I thought the Jedi didn't make emotional decisions anyway. It's unfortunate because I do like what they're doing with Anakin here. They're building his character, which I always appreciate. I'm shocked that Anakin was the one who got so much backlash when this movie came out and not the Jedi. Anakin is a sweet kid. The Jedi are the ones who are dicks.
That's why you're not liking us, Mr. Dinks. Your Highness?
No, stop! This moment between Jar Jar and Padme was so good. Exploring why the two species that live on the planet are feuding with each other is really neat stuff. I love that Jar Jar has opinions on the matter, but before Padme can respond, they have to have Palpatine interrupt and change the topic. I do like that this moment likely sparked Padme's interest in an alliance. I just wish the conversation went longer.
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
There it is, the most popular meme from this movie.
I feel I must return to mine. I've decided to go back to Naboo.
This is probably the one scene from this whole Coruscant sequence that I really like. Palpatine comes in and is just like, oh, if we wait it out, then I'll be able to help. And Padme is like, screw off, I'm going back to Naboo. Up until this point, Palpatine has pretty much been in charge of every situation he's been in. He was able to manipulate Padme beforehand, and he was also able to manipulate her during the Senate meeting, but there's this one shot of Palpatine where he actually looks surprised for once. I don't think he expected Padme would want to go back to Naboo, which says a lot about Padme and her character. This decision shows what kind of woman Padme is, and even though I may not be a big fan of her character in the following two movies, I do like her quite a bit here.
He's too old.
He is the chosen one.
I never understood the too old thing. Is it just because kids who are younger are easier to brainwash into the Jedi ways? It would make more sense if they straight up said the reason he wouldn't be trained is because they sensed a lot of fear in him. But being too old is so dumb. Why did they bother giving Anakin the test earlier if he was too old anyway?
This is the clue we need to unravel the mystery of the Sith.
Shut up, Mace Windu. Earlier in the movie, you said you would help discover the identity of Maul, and now you're telling Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon to go on their own? Nonsense. Also, is it just me, or are the Jedi underreacting to the possibility of the Sith returning? The Sith are supposed to be the arch rivals of the Jedi. The Jedi Code is structured in a way to make sure people don't fall to the dark side and become a Sith. And the Sith have been gone for 1,000 years, and all they do is send 2 Jedi to go confront him? I know I said this earlier. It just bothers me so much, and those of you who watch my videos know I like to repeat points when I'm really passionate about them.
The boy is dangerous. They all sense it. Why can't you?
I love how Obi-Wan is complaining about Anakin, but Anakin is like right behind him.
I heard Yoda talking about midichlorians. I've been wondering, what are midichlorians?
Midichlorians. I think this is the single dumbest addition to the Star Wars lore. I'm not going to go on too long of a rant because this horse has been beaten to death for over 20 years, but what I will say is that the introduction of midichlorians has done irreparable damage to the Star Wars fandom, and it has to do with the constant comparison of power levels. I hate when people constantly talk about who's more powerful than who, or when other YouTubers talk about why a certain character should never beat another character because of their power levels. It's said clearly in the original trilogy. The Force isn't a power. It's an energy field that surrounds all living things that binds the galaxy together. Remember when Yoda wasn't an idiot and he perfectly described what the Force was and how it was his ally? But in the Phantom Menace, it's about microscopic organisms. There's no microscopic organisms that gave someone their powers in Harry Potter. Utter nonsense, man. This is the first time someone has showed any real emotion for like the past 20 minutes. Gotta love Jar Jar.
Jar Binks.
Isa, Your Highness?
Yes.
I love that the Queen here is asking for Jar Jar's help. A theme of putting aside differences and fighting for the greater good is always a theme in fantasy that I really like. Also, it ties into that conversation they had a few minutes ago, which was cut short.
I'm sorry for my behavior, Master. It's not my place to disagree with you about the boy.
This brief conversation is one of the best moments of the movie. I say this because it's the only time where I feel like Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan have a real conversation with each other. They aren't talking about the council or the stuff going on Naboo. Obi-Wan just thanks Qui-Gon for believing in him, and Qui-Gon returns the favor. These are the moments that I really like in movies, and unfortunately this movie has barely any of them.
I am Queen Amidala.
Yeah, I don't know. This moment kind of falls flat for me. I do like the little exchange that Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon have. They're like, huh, good for her. Respect.
No, I beg you to help us. We are your humble servants.
I like how Padme tells Boss Nass that they are his humble servants. It mirrors Jar Jar earlier in the movie when he says, "Misa, your humble servant." As George Lucas once said, it's like poetry. It rhymes.
We shall make you Bombard General.
I get it. Jar Jar kinda indirectly helped unite the Naboo people with the Gungans, but does he really seem like the kind of guy that should be a general or a Bombad general? It's not like Jar Jar has changed all that much. He's still the same guy who happened to meet the right person at the right time. But hey, General Jar Jar is kind of funny, so I'll allow it. Click on the link here to watch Overanalyzing Star Wars The Phantom Menace Part 5. If you don't see the link, the video hasn't come out yet. Thank you everyone so much for watching another one of my videos. Don't forget to tonight the Claude Squad, and I will see you guys next time.